Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. I was in a meeting last night. We were talking about dealing with cravings. And as an aside, someone had mentioned that they suffered from depression, and we got onto a little bit of a tangent about dual diagnosis, where you've got not only substance use disorder that you're dealing with, but also things like depression, anxiety, bipolar, which I have, and the importance of consistency in treatment in taking your medication for those disorders, and how taking your medication is an important part of trying to manage not only the symptoms of those disorders, but also keeping away from cravings. When you are stable mentally, the likelihood of uncontrollable cravings coming up decreases in your recovery. So it's really important to maintain stability and consistency in treatment in order to try to decrease the kinds of cravings that might lead to a relapse in your, or a recurrence in your use of alcohol and drugs. And this is important not only in medication, but in our non-medicated treatment of these disorders. So things like going to meetings, doing consistent work, doing your step work, studying the book, doing volunteer work, fellowship, whatever is a part of your recovery program, maintaining consistency in that is super important. And it seems like the nature for most people is that once they start to feel good, they stop treating themselves, and they decide on their own that either they don't need to go to meetings as much anymore, or they don't need to talk to other people in recovery as much anymore. Similarly, they might decide that they don't need to take their medication anymore. And what they don't understand, and someone in the meeting last night put it very well, they said, you stop taking your medication because you feel good, but you don't realize that you felt good because you were taking your medication. And so as soon as you stop taking that medication, the chemicals that were helping your brain stay stable, which contributed to your overall well-being, start to diminish. And it won't happen for most medications, it won't happen immediately, but over time you'll start to see the effectiveness wane, and you'll get to a point where you're back to where you were before you started taking the medication. It's the same thing with the activities that we do for recovery. So if we are going to meetings on a consistent basis, and then we're feeling good and we decide, you know what, I don't need to go to as many meetings, or I don't need to go to meetings at all, and we stop, eventually we will get to a point where we start to feel the absence of those meetings in our lives. And it's a really, really important part of my recovery to stay as consistent as possible. That's why I've been hesitant to do too much in terms of recovery, because I know that consistency plays such an important role, and I don't want to take on too much. So, I don't, for my recovery, I have daily things that I do I don't compromise on them. And right now, this could change in time, but right now, what that looks like for me is every day I get up, I pray, I meditate, and I read something related to either recovery or just spirituality in general, and then I make one of these videos. Every day, at the end of the day, I take inventory. I look back on the day. I say, what could I have done different? what could I have done that would have been more conducive to living up to the values that I feel like are important in life. And I do that every day. It's not an incredibly lengthy process. I probably spend 5 minutes doing that. You know, the stuff that I do in the morning with the videos and reading, and prayer and meditation usually takes a half hour to an hour at most. And that hour or so of time is far less time than I used to spend getting drunk or high. So I've got the time that I need to do that. And then at least twice, if not 3 times a week, I try to hit a meeting. And that's not as much as I would like. I would like that to be closer to 3 or 4 times a week. And a lot of people would say that's not enough. But that's what I can do right now. That's the rhythm I've been able to find. And sometimes I do have to increase that just because I am having a rough time. But I can't hit a meeting every day consistently. I can do this stuff every day consistently, my morning routine. So I find that very important. And then I am built into my routine every morning, taking my medication to the point where, before in my addiction, because I was getting treated for depression and things like that before I came into recovery. And there were a lot of days where I didn't take my medication. There were a lot of days where I forgot, or I just didn't think about it that much. And now I am very consistent with it. I take it every day because I know that as soon as I miss one dose, it changes the efficacy of that treatment. It changes how effective it is. And so all of this goes to say that it's really important to me to look at where can I be consistent in the way that I'm treating myself, or in the way that I'm administering treatment that's been prescribed to me. And doing all of that is a really important part of keeping things like cravings at bay, keeping your mood stable so that you can experience some of the peace and serenity that the big book of AA promises. For example, the big book of AA has promises that talk about the peace and serenity that we can experience if we follow the prescription for a sober life. And one of the important things about that is that you don't pick and choose the days on which you do those things. You do them each day. Each day is a new day that you have, all we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And it's a daily thing we have to do. And it's the same thing with taking medication. It's a daily thing we have to do in order to get the kind of stable treatment that we need to find the peace and serenity that's there. It's available to us. We just have to be willing to engage in it that way. So really important to treat all of this on a consistent daily basis. I think that cannot be stated enough, and is a place where I have seen people multiple times, whether it's their non-medical treatment in terms of they just stop going to meetings or stop engaging with the recovery community, or whether it's their medical treatment and they go off their meds, they stop taking their medication. I've seen that kind of cessation of activity lead to recurrence of alcohol and drug use. And unfortunately, I have seen cases where the people that happens to don't come back into the rooms. And it's very sad when that happens, because at the end of the day, if you can get yourself in the rhythm to do these things on a daily basis, it's a really easy way to treat what the afflictions that brought you here in the first place. So that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. In the meantime, have a good one.